So our next guest is the CEO of the Shannon Trust. David Ahern entered the charity sector as a CEO of an inner-city charity working with disadvantaged young people in Hoxton in 2004. And the Shannon Trust was started in 1997. The Shannon Trust runs a peer-mentored reading plan that gives prisoners a vital skill and a fresh start in life. Last year, in 2012, over 4,000 manuals were ordered by prisons to teach those in prison how to read. So we're delighted to welcome to the stage David Ahern. Hi, David. So, David, could you tell us a little bit about what is the Shannon Trust?
Yeah, Kirsty, we are a very small charity. There are 8 of us, and we work with prisons up and down the country with members of staff to engage those people who can't read in prison and then get them paired with a mentor, obviously, who can read, and to teach them how to read. We're operating in about 120 prisons. The figure changes regularly because they seem to be closing them, but that's what it was at the last count. And we have a team of volunteers who work with us, and they go into the prisons and support the program on our behalf. And I know that there are 1 or 2 of our volunteers in the audience today, so it's great to see you here. And they are the people in the front line. They are the ones who have to go and make it work. They have to develop relationships with prison staff. They have to help the prison create plans as to how they can deliver the program throughout the prison. So they are key to the work we do.
Fantastic. And many of us here will know that the regimes have been changing in prisons recently. So what are some of the challenges that you've faced at the Shannon Trust, and how have you been adapting what you do to fit in with the changing system?
Yeah, it's true. The prison service has changed out of all recognition in the last 10 years. And I have to say, the vast majority of it is to the good. And I think they need to be complimented upon that. But with the changes have come challenges as well, as they've reduced budgets. And reduced budgets means staff cutbacks. It means a cutback on services that are offered. And it makes it more challenging for those on the outside to get on the inside to do the work that they want to do. And I know this is a common experience for many, many people in the audience today. And I was with an SM team member, a senior management team member of a prison the other day, and he was really quite upbeat about the whole thing. But what he said was, we're sort of in a U-shaped process, and we're right at the bottom of the U. So we've experienced all the tough stuff. We're restructuring, but actually, things do recover. We find a way of working. We find a way of embracing those organizations that provide essential services because they need the charity sector. And there's not a person or woman in the prison service would say that there's not a role for the charity sector. So, be affirmed that that is the case, but, we are at a tough time. One of the things that we have seen is just less staff time to get us through the gate. It's time-consuming, and then to spend time with us, talking about our program, meeting with prisoners, doing prisoner training, and that all has an impact on staff time. So we have to look at ways that we can reduce the level of commitment that we're putting upon the prison service. Under the new it's called benchmarking. I'm sure that's familiar to 1 or 2 people here. They have been plotting every 15 minutes of an officer's time. So, if you're at one end of a prison and it's a 20-minute walk to get to the reception, and then you've got to then go back, you've taken up quite a few chunks of the time that you have available. And many are saying, we can't do that anymore. So the sorts of things that we've done is we've worked in close collaboration with specific departments. We've been working with the main educational providers and seeing how we fit with what they're trying to do. some argue that we're competing, but we say, no, we're not, because what we're striving to do is, through the reading plan, is to get people into education, into learning and skills. So it's about developing relationships and seeing how you add value to other organizations in the prison. So that's one of the things we've been doing.
And practically, on the ground then in the prisons, how does the Shannon Trust fit in to these new regimes?
Again, a challenge. It's not been easy, but we've been hugely fortunate that we have been allocated staff time to run our program, and that is going to make an enormous difference to our work. We've moved away from relying on informal support to actually dedicated, committed time. And with that committed time, we can now structure what we're doing. We can put in place processes for doing things. You know, one of our struggles, and I'm sure people can relate to it, we will be working in a prison and we'll be working in one small department, and that might engage 20 or 30 prisons in a prison out of 1,500. So what we're striving to do is to be an all-prison program, so that wherever there are people who can't read, we can send our mentors in there to engage them and then start the journey of learning to read.
And you teach people to read through peer mentoring. What difference does that make, both to those learning to read, but also to those who are mentoring?
Yeah, I think it's truly disproportionate. We have many prisoners who started to learn to read, and officers and members of staff say, that individual has changed out of all recognition. That's somebody who wouldn't speak to me 2 or 3 weeks ago. That was somebody who had a filthy cell. Their cell is now tidy. That is somebody who now wants to go into a workshop to learn a skill. Before, they wouldn't entertain doing anything. So the peer mentoring, I think, has 2 elements to it. The first one is it's about another human being coming alongside somebody, and it's affirming them that they're worthwhile, because most people in prison have such a low opinion of themselves. And I'm sure Shane and others who have experienced prison, there may be an exterior of being very tough and resilient and coping, but inside, most of them are churning away, just wishing life was different. So when somebody comes alongside and says, you're worthwhile, and not only are you worthwhile, I'm going to help you do something that can change your life. And it is the most basic of skills, but it's a cornerstone for just about everything that we could possibly want to go on to do. So peer mentoring that has a real purpose has the potential for being really transformational. Prisoners are always, or adults are always saying, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Or what's in it for me, selfishly? And while they can see some benefit from that, it encourages them to keep engaged in something which for many is a very tough thing to be doing, because to admit you can't read when you're 30, 40 or 50 is not easy.
Lastly, do you have a favourite story about somebody who's been through the Shannon Trust programme, who's learnt to read, that you could share with us all?
Yeah, we've got many stories. They are amazing, and every time I go into a prison, I hear what has happened, and it's that what says to me, keep doing what you're doing, because it is making a difference in individual lives. Lives are being transformed. But just one example, there was a guy who's 50. He couldn't read at all, and he had been sent to prison for some fairly serious misdemeanor. He was in for 3 to 4 years, and he couldn't read. And some distance into his sentence, a couple of years into his sentence, he got a letter from his 7-year-old son, and he knew it was from his son, but he couldn't read it. And he said, I had to go and ask somebody else to read a letter from my son. It's the first letter I've ever received from him. And he said it just broke his heart. And he said, I'm never, ever going to let that happen again. So he got himself a mentor. He had no learning difficulties, or no significant learning difficulties. Within 4 months, he had learned to read. He had completed the program. He then became an avid reader. He was a transformed prisoner. Within 6 months, he says, I want to be a mentor. And so, the best person that can mentor is somebody who can read, who's been through the process, because they understand all the problems, the multiple problems that they're struggling with. So successful was he as a mentor, he then became the mentor that coordinated every mentor in that prison. And they had 60 mentors in that prison. And he was coordinating all of the work that they were doing, helping other non-readers. He then started writing short stories. And literally, I spoke to him about 2 months before he left. He said, I've got these short stories, and I've got somebody who's a publisher, and they are going to be published.
When did they come out? Thank you so much, David. It's so great to hear a little bit about the Shannon Trust. You can take a look at their website for more information if you'd like to look. Thank you, David.